You're exhausted. You feel like you're burning out. But what if it's not only because you're doing too much and have too much on your plate? What if it is also because you've been being too much for too many people? ADHD burnout is real. And while sometimes that can be because we do pile on too much on our plates because we have a hard time saying no to ourselves and others for a myriad of reasons, sometimes it's not about the tasks. Sometimes it's from the performance, which we don't even think of as a performance anymore. From the masking, the managing, the finessing situations to avoid rejection and judgment and criticism and people no longer wanting to give us projects because they don't trust us, whatever it is. Sometimes that's what it is. So today we're exploring this exhaustion that comes not from overwork, but from over pleasing and over masking, especially as ADHD women. If this sounds good to you, be sure to listen. Welcome to the Self Loved ADHD Woman's Way podcast. I'm your host, Jen Barnes. If you're an ADHD woman entrepreneur, ADHD adjacent, or ADHD ish, you've come to the right place. We'll dive deep into the unique challenges you face, from the inner turmoil to the outer obstacles. We'll blend neuroscience, IFS, and somatic healing, and explore practical strategies to help you navigate the world of entrepreneurship with ADHD with greater ease and effectiveness. I'm glad you're here. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, so exhaustion from being pleasant. I talked a little bit about this recently, but I want to expand on it a bit. Growing up, a lot of us inherently figured out that whatever was going on with us, that if we were pleasant to people, that they treated us better. That if we did what they wanted, they were kinder to us and more forgiving when we had moments of being less than our fantastically aligned selves. And I want to share about that. I definitely am someone who masked through overfunctioning, people pleasing, perfectionism, and high achievement. And a lot of that I see now, and maybe you see this in yourself, as I look back, it got me through a lot of things. It got me all the way through college and grad school and into a career that's more aligned than my first one, even though I loved math. But it got me here. And at the same time, there was a deep cost to it. Because yes, I was able to do the schoolwork and all that stuff, but there were signs along the way that it wasn't working. I didn't really have close friends that I really felt like knew me. And of course they didn't because I was masking so that I wouldn't be rejected. So they didn't actually know me. They just knew the masked version of myself. So I was more pleasant and easygoing, easy to get along. I don't know that I could call myself easygoing, but more easy to get along with. And that wasn't me. So no wonder a lot of us who masked may have felt like maybe we didn't have the closest connections, or maybe you feel like you have a ton of friends and you were always the vibrant, bubbly one, but maybe you never felt like you had anyone close. Or maybe there were other signs of your pushing and overachieving and high functioning, people pleasing, and perfectionism, like maybe digestive issues or anxiety that developed at some point in your life, which for me was in my 20s, or maybe something else. I want you to know by sharing a little bit of my story that you're not alone, that a lot of us were just trying to avoid being labeled as difficult. And also how we got praise for our, I don't want to say quietness exactly, because I don't know. I mean, I have hyperactive type of ADHD. I don't know that quiet would ever have been used to describe me. But that when I was quiet or when I didn't be so big, definitely that was more appreciated. And if this is you, it came at a cost. So a lot of us did people pleasing as a nervous system strategy. It's not just a personality quirk or something we're like, this sounds like a great idea. A lot of times it's a fawn response, a trauma response that can have us like trying to please people so that we're not rejected. And I'm not saying all of us were abused by our families or have complex trauma, though some of us do. But a lot of us have unresolved wounds of being rejected in some way for our ADHD, even if it wasn't directly. Like if you're anything like me, maybe you were the good girl and avoided trouble at all costs, but you saw other kids, and for me, it was usually the boys, getting in all kinds of trouble for being squirrely or daydreaming, whatever other ADHD type tendencies they had, so that we put ourselves in this tight box. And that, in a lot of ways, was a fun response. It's what so many of us ADHD women learn to do to survive rejection, shame, and even overstimulation. Masking isn't always loud. It can be pleasantness, emotional labor, like trying to anticipate how someone else might feel and over planning our conversations, anticipating other needs, like, oh, maybe they need this, and then doing things for them, even maybe in an enabling way. Like we're not trying to be enabling, but maybe that happens. And really holding space for everyone but ourselves. And if you're seeing yourself in this, again, I want you to know you're not alone. We ADHD women are especially vulnerable to these patterns. We are highly attuned to rejection. Hello, RSD, right? Our brains track everything, which makes us anticipate others' needs before our own. In some ways, it looks a lot like the hypervigilance of my clients who have PTSD. And sometimes I believe that perhaps we have trauma or at least unhealed wounds growing up ADHD that then do develop into PTSD or PTSD like symptoms. Many of us grew up being rewarded for being quiet or not causing trouble, being helpful, or not too much. And for a lot of us, then we internalize this belief that if I'm easy, I'll be safe. If I'm likable, I'll be loved. The thing is, though, and maybe you're realizing this, maybe you already realized this, is this chronic masking where we never really just get to let down and be ourselves unless we live alone, leads to chronic stress. And what we know from our nervous system is when we are under chronic stress, we tend to vacillate between our fight or flight response. So we're like trying to make sure that everything's going okay, we're trying to protect, into our shutdown response or crashing. And that eventually leads to burnout. The signs that you are done people pleasing are that you're tired but wired. You're snapping at people but still saying yes and then often feel resentful. You fantasize about disappearing, not because you hate your work, but because you're tired of having to be palatable all the time. Maybe you dread social interactions, even ones you used to enjoy. Burnout is both physical and emotional. But if you rest and still feel dead inside, it may be more than just physical. It may be that your spirit is begging you to stop performing, to step into greater alignment with who you really are. So, if that's the case, now what? Because if we stop this masking, and I've noticed this through different points in my life, and I'm certainly going through a layer of it now, as we start to let go of our pleasant mask, which, by the way, as I said in a recent episode, just because we're not making ourselves be palatable and pleasant doesn't mean we're unpleasant. It's just, we're just being ourselves like everyone else gets to be. But as we let go of this pleasant mask, some people go away or reject us or try to stuff us back into our well-masked box. And then we have some choices to make. Do we want to continue to conform to what they need and want and expect? Or do we want to honor our own needs and be who we are? For a long time, I've been in a certain situation, I have been getting along because I wanted to keep this one person in my life so much at the cost of my own self being in my life. And so when we get to this realization, we do have a choice. We can keep doing what we've been doing. But I got to tell you, there comes a time, and for me, it's been around age 51, that we're just like, I can't do that anymore. I can't keep abandoning myself over and over just to be pleasant and easy for other people, just to be convenient so they want to be around me. So there's grief, and we get to see, like, maybe as we step into our own joy, maybe as we step into our own being and truly embrace joy and compassion and kindness, but without, like, being spineless, right? Like, we still have, how Brene Brown, she says, "A strong back, open heart, wild front," right? It's that idea. We're not doing this without boundaries. We're doing it with boundaries. And but maybe as we go into this more aligned version of ourselves, some of the people that we really love and care about might go away. They may no longer want to be around us. And of course, obviously, like my school social worker self knows, because I told all the teenagers this back in the day, that that if someone doesn't stick around when we're ourselves, they're not actually for us. They don't actually love and care about us. They care about what they want us to be and when we comply with it. And, I don't know that you can point that out with them. They may or may not see that, but it's the truth. And so when we want to live real and authentic lives, and as we peel through the layers over the decades of our lives, we end up grieving past relationships with people who can no longer support who we really are or who we are in this season as we continue to peel away the layers of the mask. And the beauty that comes from this is that creates space not only for people who do love and accept you for who you are and embrace you for who you are, but for you to reconnect with your highest self, for the real you to shine. And then you get to work through the pieces that parts of you still struggle with around thinking you're a bitch if you set a boundary. Because the truth is you're not a bitch if you set a boundary. You're in charge of your time. It's the one resource that you can never get more of is your time and your energy. And so in those situations, you're just getting to decide how you want to be. And if people think you're a bitch, maybe they're not your people. And I'm not saying you get to be like, no, I'm not spending any time with you, right? Like Brene Brown often talks about boundary bullies. And I certainly remember this when I first started setting boundaries in my 20s. It was like, I didn't do it well. It wasn't exactly this bad, but I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And again, that's not exactly how it went, but it is some of what was going on. It was like that kind of energy. And so that's not the greatest. This doesn't make you a bitch. It means you're learning boundaries and how to set them constructively. But again, that's not being a bitch. It's you taking care of yourself. And actually, what I'll add to that, if you do have concerns about being called a bitch or feeling like a bitch or whatever, one of the things that I found really useful from Brene Brown's work is that she has found that the most compassionate people are also the most boundary conscious people. They're the ones who only say yes when they mean it, and they say no otherwise. They are more authentically themselves. And that's compassionate, because what happens when we keep saying yes and we really mean no? What happens when we mask ourselves to be more pleasant? I'll tell you what happens. We get resentful. We get irritated. We don't want to be around those people. And then we just want to cut ourselves off from them. And that isn't really compassionate to them. And it's certainly not compassionate to ourselves. But if all of a sudden we disappear from their lives because we don't like how they've been treating us, which is really how we've allowed them to be treating us, then that's hurtful to them. And so really, one of the most compassionate things we can do for a relationship is to be who we are, to be our authentic selves, kindly, compassionately, of course, and set the boundaries we need to set. Another piece of this I want to talk about is nervous system support. So, as we are working through, like, how do I unmask? How do I show up as my authentic self? A lot of times, I mean, personally, I think we might need to do it in increments because it might, it might just like, I don't know, like, I'm big and bold. It might shock the systems of the people around us. I mean, that's one way to do it. Or we might ease into our authenticity. I suppose you can reflect on what's a better fit for you. But whichever option we're going to do, it's important to orient to safety before social interactions, especially with people who aren't used to us unmasked. So, how can we regulate our nervous systems? How can we, do some breath work, be with the parts of us that are uneasy, and go into these situations our more authentic self from a place of groundedness? How can we notice cues of authenticity in ourselves and others versus performance? One way might be to be like checking in with yourself and asking, is this my truth or my socialization and training? Right? Like, what does it feel like in my body if I'm this way? For me, if I notice what it feels like in my body when I'm masking, it actually feels like armor. Like, I've been writing a lot more about this lately. And when I'm under stress and I feel like I have a lot of people-y things to do, I feel like there's like something's holding me. It's right out in front of my chest and it's holding me. And as I sank into that sensation the other day, I realized that it is parts of armor protecting me. And so when I notice that's not my truth. And that doesn't mean I have to be like, get out of the way. God, that song, Move, Get Out of the Way. I think, the word in between there. But anyway, for some reason that just came into my mind. Um, anyway, but that we're not saying like, oh, if we notice that we have to automatically, authentically be ourselves in every moment. Don't get me wrong. There are times when we may choose to mask, especially like at work. Maybe our employer isn't super receptive to us being ADHD. And so perhaps there's some things that we do dial back. So letting yourself check in, what does it feel like in your body to be this way, both in general, but for this particular moment? And then as you're with people, if they're making requests from you, you can start to practice saying things like, let me get back to you on that. I'm not available for that right now. Or let me reflect on that a bit more. Let me chew on it. Or thank you for asking. That doesn't work for me. You don't have to go full blown rebellion. Just start with micro unmasking. So if you've been feeling drained, but you're not doing more than usual, you're not broken, but maybe your nervous system is saying, please stop performing. Stop masking so much. Maybe it's time to come home to yourself. And if you're finding that this is resonating and you want to explore this deeper in a safe, guided way, I am so excited. I have created a journal book experience for you. It is a tangible journal book, both book and journal. There's both book and reading in there and journal prompts, as well as some QR codes for some guided meditations or practices, I should say. And it comes in a beautifully branded keepsake box with these items that I selected for you that are going to feel like a present to use in the Self-Love Woman Way ritual that I created for you to make sure that you actually use this beautiful journal book experience. It's called The Self-Love Woman Way, How to Stop Playing Small with ADHD. So if you're wanting to dive into this and really step into more of who you are and do less masking, be sure to check out the link in the show notes or description if you're watching this on YouTube, because I created this just for you, and I hope you're as excited about it as I am and who you will become. If you're not subscribed or following this podcast yet, I would love it if you hit that. And also, if you know an ADHD woman who might benefit from this kind of ADHD support, I would love it if you would share this episode or just even share the podcast in general. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.